everybody, I'm Natalie with Missouri Star Quilt Company, and I am excited to show you today's project. This quilt is called Modern Mosaic, and we used scraps and hexagons to create a fun quilt. It gives you tons of practice in crumb piecing and also Y seams, and I think you're going to love it, so let's get started. Okay, so to make this quilt, we're going to need 1 layer cake of fabric, and I've used Molly's Magic by Sarah Maxwell for Andover Fabrics. You're going to need some background fabric, and that's this black. You'll see that around the blocks right here. You're going to need 1 2/3 yards of that, and that includes your inner border. The other thing you'll need is a little bit of border fabric. We've got 1 yard for that, and then your backing is 3 5/8 yards, or 3.5 yards if that's easier than the 5/8, or 1 7/8 yards if you're using a 108. You'll also need the Missouri Star large and medium hexagon templates and a little bit of courage. All right, it's time to get started. This quilt is easier than it looks, but we are going to have to deal with Y seams. So that's where the tricky part comes in. The rest of it is super simple. We're going to start by cutting some 2.5-inch strips from our background fabric, and then we're going to cut our entire package of 10-inch print squares into the large size hexagon. So we're going to get started on that. I'll cut a couple strips here so that I'm ready for doing the outsides of those little hexies. I just think they're so cute. And it's a really fun way to use up all of the fabric that you have. This would be great, I think, for, stash quilting, because you can see all those little bits and pieces of fabric. I've got my ruler, and I am going to start by straightening this edge. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull that fabric. Oops, didn't quite cut it all the way. Happens to the best of us. Okay, got that. I'm going to straighten him out again. You could press this if you wanted to be more precise. I'm not super concerned about it because we are going to have plenty of room after we add this border to then square it again with the large template. And you'll see how that works coming up here. So I'm just going to cut a couple. I don't need very many to show a few blocks. Okay, we'll do 3. And I'm going to set this aside. And then I'm going to start with a few of these. They get sort of stuck together, and I want a variety, not doubles. So let's see what I can pull out here. I think I'll do one of these. So I have 4 or 5 pieces of fabric stacked up here. I can cut through that many. I feel confident about it. If you don't, just do 2 or 3 or just 1 at a time if that's what you feel is best. It's a total quilter's preference thing. I like to cut through several layers to save time, but I think if I was worried about it, or if I had trouble with cutting or pressure, then I would definitely go down to 1 or 2 layers at most. So don't think what I do is the only way, it's just a way. All right, so I'm going to line this up down here in this bottom corner. So you can see that I've got like a big chunk of fabric up here and a big strip up here. I've got little triangles on these sides. That is what I'm going to use to make all of those scrap blocks. So I'm going to cut these pieces, and I'm just going to set them aside. I will put all of this in a big pile. I'm not worried about how long things are, or if I cut them all the same way. There's really nothing to worry about there, because these are going to be crumb-pieced. Whoops, I think my blade is a little loose. Let me grab this side and this side. All right, so I don't use that piece, but all of these pieces are going to sit in a pile, and then these little ladies are going to sit in a separate pile, because these are my whole hexagons that will be used in all of these other locations. Okay, so that part is done. Let's pretend I cut the whole layer cake. I have a pile of scraps that I cut when making the samples, this sample quilt. And so I'm gonna put all of these down. They're just leftovers, and I will throw these in my crumb bin when I'm finished. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start by picking up 2 pieces and sewing them together. It doesn't matter if they're the same size or if they match. You can do a strip. I do like to start with like a strip and a triangle just to get going. And I will select several of these and sew them in like a chain piecing method. So I'm just gonna put these 2 together. We'll see how that looks. Maybe I'll do them this way. And then we're just gonna add these to each other. So you start with a few 2 pieces, and then you'll do 4s and so on. All right, I'm gonna run these over to the iron, and I'm gonna press them because it is easier to stitch on flat blocks when you're doing any kind of crumb piecing. So having that pressed, it helps to keep everything flat and to reduce bulk in your seams. That way you're not gonna get any little folds or tucks. Okay, so now we have some of these pieces that we've sewn and pressed, and what I'm gonna do is add this to this side. I'm gonna do it at an angle, and I'm just gonna sew over that seam and continue to make this piece a little bigger. I'm gonna connect this one to another set that I've already done here. I think I'll press this guy and connect those. So I just stitch whatever shapes, whatever pieces we have, and then I press them open and see where to put the next piece of fabric. So it's all random, all very scrappy, and I'm not worried about anything matching up. It's very relaxing in that sense because you can just put fabric together and sew. It doesn't have to be a perfect seam even, because it just has to go together. No rules on this. It's awesome. I guess just relax and have fun. All right. So on this piece, I don't know if you guys can see that from up ahead. I've got extra fabric over here. So I'm gonna grab this little 2.5 inch ruler. You can use whatever you have on hand, but I'm gonna line that up and cut that at 1/4 of an inch so that I don't have that bulk in the back of my fabric. And now I will take it and press it back, and it'll be all ready to go. This one, I'm gonna just press and see what happens. Alrighty, so I think what I'll do with these, I think I will stitch this here. I'm going to trim that off. I'm just going to stitch this little stitch. Keep in mind, you can be a lot more efficient than I'm being here. I'm doing 1 or 2 things at a time. You can sit and do all of your pile into sets of 2 and then sets of 4 and sets of 6, however you want to do that. I tend to get impatient for the end result, and I want to cut that little hexie out as soon as possible. So I usually make that cut as soon as I have that size fabric built. So you can do it either way, as efficient as you want or as freewheeling as you feel. Whatever floats your boat. Okay, so now I have this piece, and it's got a lot of little zigzags in it. So I think what I'm gonna do, because I wanna eventually add it to my bigger piece of fabric, and something needs to now have some kind of straight line to stitch on. So I'm gonna trim this one right here straight off. Maybe I'll do this one. Am I long enough for that? Yeah, I think I can do that. Okay, so I'm gonna trim this side straight because I need a thing to sew against. And I'm also going to trim a straight line here. I'm going to go along with this. I'll flip this so it's easier to see. So see how this strip comes out? I'm going to, let's see, go, maybe I'm going to go this way and just cut that thing off. And then I will add other fabric to this set. So what I want to do here is add to this. And I think that's going to look fun. So we shall see. All right, now I'm going to press this big piece back, which I had some of this made already, but now I've got this addition stitched onto it, and some of the fabric's a little stretchy, and it's okay. We're going to just trim it now to however we want it to be. All right, so I'm going to take my small or medium, my medium hexagon, and I'm going to line it up, and you can see that like it looks pretty cool like that. Maybe I want some more of these colors. Maybe I want to come down here and get this section. You can be as conservative or as focal as you want to be. Like if you wanted to fussy cut something, this is a great time to do that. You could create shapes if you wanted to. You could line things up with the lines so that everyone has a straight line somewhere. It's whatever you want, whatever makes you happy. Because that is what this quilt is about. This quilt is a joy quilt. It's for fun and joy and loving and seeing all the fabrics that you have in your collection or seeing all the fabrics in a line you love. I do think this Molly's Magic is particularly beautiful. It's got all those lovely jewel tones and flowers. Doesn't get much better than that. All right, so I'm just going to cut straight around it. Not too worried about what's left over because I can add to it and reuse it. Okay, so I've got one done. I'm going to come over here and grab this little section. That is going to be cute. I think if I do that, can I get 3? I don't know. I think maybe if I do it down here, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try and maximize. Oops, I definitely miscut that. That's okay. Who's gonna know? I'm just gonna cut it off and start over. Okay. There's 2. All right. Now I am going to cut that off, and I think I'm actually gonna just cut this in half. And I'm gonna add this piece back on. Remove that little piece of fabric because it doesn't need to be there. All right, so I'm going to stitch this to this, and I think I might be able to get another hexie out of it. Alrighty. Oh, I need one more strip of fabric, and I'm going to put one of those right here so that I catch, and because I want to catch all of these little half or partial seams from things I cut and sewed, I'm going to put a strip right on top of that. Use this one. That will give me just the amount I need, I think. One more shot at it, and then we go and move on. Okay, there we go. Now I'm up and out of all the danger zones. That is perfect. Okay. And I will always save and stack up these pieces that are pretty large. I'll trim them up so that they're easier to work with, but I keep these in a pile so that as I continue to sew, I can continue to put all of those little leftover pieces back together into something that works. And you can add this to one of these one of these rectangles, or a bigger, let's see, we've got like bigger triangles here. You can add that to that, and it builds up really quickly when you're putting already pieced sections together. So it's fun for me. And you can use a rotating mat if you like. If it feels uncomfortable or awkward, don't make that cut, because I'd hate for you to get hurt. Maybe just reposition yourself. So, okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put our 2.5-inch strips on these hexies. We're gonna border them because that is what makes them look like they're like floating out here. I put this border on and then I retrimmed it with the larger hexie. So we're gonna do one side, we'll trim it, and we'll do another side, and I will show you how that works. I'm just lining these up and stitching, and then what I'm gonna do is I make sure that as I stitch on this strip of fabric, that these, all I need is for it to be at this edge. So I can scoot these closer and overlap them. It's not one of those things where you need the distance to make the angle that you're cutting. These can go pretty close together. So I'm gonna line them up just like this. Sew all three, I'll bring them over, cut them apart, press them, and then I'm gonna trim that side and we'll put the next strip on. And I'm just gonna hold these here and stitch onto one strip at a time. And also, I'm right-handed, so all of this is oriented that makes sense to me. If you're left-handed, try doing it the opposite way and see if that is more comfortable. I think a lot of times my brain is like, go clockwise, when, you know, if you're a righty or a lefty, sometimes counterclockwise is easier. It just depends on what you're doing. Okay, so it looks like this, and you can either cut them apart with a rotary cutter as long as you move them out of your way, or you could use your scissors. I often do scissors because I can do this while seated, and then I can spin over and iron and then spin back. All right, I'm going to press this back now. And then this is where you're going to trim this side and stitch. So for me, I always go clockwise. So I put it on this side first, now I'm turning that and doing the next side. I'm going to use my ruler to trim off this fabric, so that is my stitch seam. And it lines up just good and perfect, and it's a lot easier, I promise, than it looks. So I'll do that to all three, and then I will stitch all three onto another strip. All right, same thing. Clip them apart. They just have to be in between in a straight, nice little straight line. Because we are going to trim these. I do always press the dark fabric, the little dark strip, I press that out so that everything is underneath that fabric instead of pressing back onto the hexagon, because there's so many seams, it wouldn't want to stay that way. The fabric will fight you. So that is why I go ahead and press these towards the strip. It's just much easier. And then I'm gonna trim this, and we're gonna continue adding these strips to the outside until we get to the end, and I will speed it up for you a little bit, I think, so we can get this done and get to that point, and then we'll talk about piecing hexies. Okay, we are up to our last strip. I'm going to go ahead and trim these apart. We'll press them. I don't need that much. There we go. Okay, now it is time for the last strip. So this trimming is just slightly different. We're going to go all the way across because we need this full length of a straight line to stitch our last piece of fabric to. The last row around the outside edge. So I'm just going to start up here and stitch to down here, and I'm not worried if it intersects with that or not, because that is going to get cut off. So don't stress. If yours looks like mine, you're all right. It's all good. And one more. Okay, I think I might need one more piece of fabric. There we go. Grab another strip so I don't run out. Now, I'm not worried about this strip, just so you know. I'm only worried about stitching to this one. So I'm kind of just going to move that out of the way. I don't need to stitch over it, but if I do, that's also not a big deal. It just feels kind of silly to me to stitch that far back. Same with that piece. I'm just scooting that out of the way, just folding it over a little bit. You can trim it off before you get here if you want to. All right. Gotta start that new one. I knew I wouldn't have enough. You never can tell. Well, you can, because math, that's really how you tell. But some things are more fun if they're a mystery, and sometimes I feel that way about math. All right, so now we're going to trim these and press them and square them. We are almost to the finish line. It's very close. Okay. There's that one and this one. I think they're so cute. I love this little peak of orange right here. It's just a tiny little sliver, but I love it. I love how that breaks through. Okay, so now we're going to grab our larger hexagon ruler template and we're going to line it up. Now this is cool because we have all of these lines, cross lines, and then we have this focal center. So I know that if I center it right in the middle, if I look at all these lines and I see that where I have a point on my small hexie, one of these lines intersects with that, then I know that my hexagon is going to be trimmed straight and it's going to be even all the way around, because these don't match if it's not even. You'll find that you have to twist it to make them fit where they go. And once everything is lined up in those little corners, I don't know how it works, but that is center. So you can look also to see how much space is between the black line and this green line in the middle for the smaller hexie, and use that to center things up. It's really quite easy to do. You can eyeball it and it's no problem. They just look great. So I'm just going to trim all the way around this. Now is a good time for a spinning mat if you want, or a littler mat that you can turn. I will get most of the way around and then I'll turn it for that last. Well, let's do the last two. So I'm just going to use the fabric and slide it around. The ruler typically doesn't slide when I do that, just so you know. It's like a little hack. It may or may not work for you, probably depends on how sticky your mat is. This one's, it's pretty slick and smooth, so it slides easily. But there you go. We've got a beautiful hexie, a scrappy one, and it's so cute. It's going to look great. We'll do all of these. Gonna line them up, find those little points, make the lines go where they go. Yep, here we go. And you're ultimately cutting off about a ½ inch plus whatever's in the corner. But not too terrible. I didn't want to go so close that if we accidentally stitched with a wide seam, we wouldn't have enough to trim it off. So I feel like it's an appropriate amount for squaring. It's easier for me if I have more fabric than less as far as that seam, because my seams, I don't know if you've noticed, but they're not always straight. They're not always consistent. Sometimes my 1/4 inches are too big and sometimes they're too small, and sometimes I sew differently from day to day and my stuff doesn't want to match by the end of the week. But, you know, we're all doing the best we can. So I try to build in a little room for error and stretching and growing and maybe, you know, learning something new, getting a little better at it. But also being able to maintain that joy that is usually what we felt when we first started quilting, and that's what we keep coming back for. So, all right, so now it's time. We've got these blocks, we've got our full blocks. We're gonna lay our quilt out, and you'll notice up here that I've laid them out with the points up and the flats vertical. So this seam right here is where our Y seams will be, and so we need to mark our hexagons so that they're ready for that, and then we'll start sewing together our rows widthwise first, and then we'll join row to row. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is flip these over, and I'm gonna place this guy right on here, and you can do this right after you cut them if you wanted to be prepped ahead of time. I'm doing it right now. You can do it either way, as long as it gets done. So I'm looking for, yeah, a white pencil is going to show up the best. And we just put that in there, spin it around so it makes a little dot. It's perfect. You can use a regular pencil. You could use a Sharpie marker. Something fine point will fit in this hole the best, I think. But yeah, any kind of pencil that shows up on your fabric will do. I love this one because it has 3 colors. It's got white, blue, and pink, and that shows up on almost every fabric, which is great because sometimes you want to see it on a light fabric, and then, you know, 2 days later you're working with a dark background. So I like that it has options. All right, I can see these. You probably can't because it's far away, and these are really light colors. I'm going to do some on this. Okay. So you can, maybe you can see that from the top cam. We've got a little dot here and here. This is where we're going to put our pins and make sure that we stitch to those points. Okay, I'm going to lay it out where I've got like 2 rows, I think. So I'll do one here, and then I'll do one, 2, and 3. So I'm going to pretend that this is the beginning of my row, and this little lady's going to sit here. So if I'm starting the quilt, these pieces are these ones right here, or these ones right here, actually. Right here. This little lady is the first one, and then we've got 3 underneath. So I'm just going to sew this section, and it's going to be great. We're going to do it. First thing I'm going to do is stitch together this straight seam. And I want to make sure that it's lined up as well as possible, because we're going to be looking to join those points before you know it. All right, I've got this one done, and I'm going to start the next row. And I wanted to remind you that what we're going to do is stitch from dot to dot on these long seams. I think I must have only marked one. Let's do that real quick. Where is my blah, blah, blah? There you are. I must have just thought I was all ready to go. But honestly, not a big deal. Only takes a minute. And I'll do this one just to be on the a little bit ahead of myself. So I don't, oops, not the middle. Not that big one doesn't need a marker. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to sew my seam from the dot to the dot, because we need to leave those edges open for when we join them to the row. And I didn't mention that the first time around, but I didn't want to forget it either. It's kind of a big deal. Okay, right on the dot. And I slow down pretty well when I get here because I don't want to go past it. But if you do go past it, you can just pick out a stitch or 2 to open it back up and have that ready for your next seam. Just go to the dot. Trust those lines. They are marked in just the right places. Okay. All right, now I am not going to press these. I'm just going to go ahead and line them up just like this. So now I'm going to do this seam. I'm going to do dot to dot, which it looks like I didn't dot this one either. Oh my goodness. I only did one print and one scrappy. So that's my joy. Okay. But the good news is I stitched to the right places so it matches on the back. Good job. Alrighty. So this little one lines up right here, and I'm going to start first by doing this seam to this dot, and then I will press that back and add the next one this way. I'll finger press it. I'm not thinking I'm going to go over to the iron yet. Alrighty. This is a time 2 where you stitch right to that dot, and then we're going to take this and we're going to flip it so that this one comes out, and you can see here how this seam sort of falls open because we stitched to that dot. It gives you enough room to do the next stitch, the next little section. And so it's all straight seams, but you're going to have to wiggle your fabric around from seam to seam. But it's gonna work out great. I promise. It's easier than it looks. If I can do it, you can do it. And all things in their time. Okay, now I've got one more seam to join right here. So I am going to do that. I just have to, my little seam came undone, so I'm going to put a little stitch in here to get them reconnected back to where they need to be. You run the risk of that with these seams. Okay, so now I'm going to flip this next one down. You can see what's happening here. So we've got this row, we've got these seamed, and then this one is the next one. So I'm going to flip him down and pull this guy out. You can see how it pulls out the seam right there a little bit, so I can stitch on these two pieces of fabric to the next section or intersection, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I'm going to do one more. This is our last seam. You can roll it forward or back, whichever way works. But now we're pulling out this fabric and lining up this seam to finish off the row. Then we'll go to the iron and press it and see how we did. Okay, I'm ready to press, and I think it's going to be good. And if not, I can fix it. You can always fix it. It's quilting. Oh, I got a few seams popped out here, like threads showing on the front. I do recommend using black thread when you're stitching with black fabric, but being on the video, I didn't want to switch thread. I like to just be able to demonstrate. But yes, if I'm using dark fabric, I'm usually using dark thread. It doesn't have to be black because navy blue or dark gray. I usually just use colors or gray or white that blend behind the fabric I'm using. If it's on the inside, it doesn't matter what color it is. Okay, and there you have it. This is our little section with our Y seams. I hope that made it like so much easier, and I promise you it will get easier as you practice it. This is one of those skills that can be learned, and your ability to do it can be increased over time. It's a skill that I'm glad I have it now. I didn't know how to do this before we started researching and working on the ruler, and so now I can piece Y seams, and I'm not afraid of them. I don't have to cut everything in half. Although that is a good trick. I still stand by that. All right, so you'll notice this is in the quilt right here, and this piece is hanging off. So what you're going to want to do is just trim that line straight, and then on this side you'll do the same thing, and they'll offset into each other how they're supposed to be. Then you will also trim your top straight and your bottom straight and add your 2.5 inch inner border. And this outer border is lovely. It's 5 inches. You can see this beautiful clamshell pattern is what we used for the machine quilting. Our thread color is light pink, and I love how that shows up on the black and then blends into everything else. It's really pretty. So experiment with your thread colors sometimes. It could be fun. Okay, our backing is this beautiful print from the line. I just think that turned out great. This quilt ends up being 56 by 71. Now, you are going to have quite a bit of scraps left over, so if you wanted to go crazy and make more scrap hexagons, you absolutely could enlarge this very easily. But hopefully you have fun with it. It was fun for me. I love this quilt. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial on Modern Mosaic from the Missouri Star Quilt Company. Bye. Hi everybody, I hope you enjoyed today's video. We're trying super hard to get to 1 million subscribers, so if you enjoyed it and you want to see more, just hit subscribe and share with your friends and encourage them to do the same, and I will see you next Friday with a brand new tutorial.